In metika nanwa I Wanlo TV I yupwa me Ngec Ngene amir phone daga joli daga an kilonya ni ema acquire tin I yupwa me Ngec Ngene ya yo mada akakelo iwo latien wa kira jui awaji iwo ni yup eni wakelo iwo lutien wa lumbegi wa wogiwa megiwa bene magutiw ikabere mapat a o winyu fongi wanywago tam kedgi bene wabere kanyamo mera lok kirale mwarama wachine ni we celebrate them so tin ya yomba dani atikila tin wa makilunye ni James Onen James ubere la tin muti radio chok mwaka pera rio kiwi no awards madwong ma intake wenyu radio angayo ni wenyu nying James Polakara and wenyu ni Fatboy so ya yo madani tin amir kong wanywak lo kong wani James ento alego ni tin kong wati kong kile mwan wana chuli benyo wan luo bena wakwano bena wariak so tin alego ni ko ye kong wadum le mwan wama wakwano pian wili na watin lepe chuli nenyo lep luo ne pe tekotwal dok pe duong tutwal so alevni ko ubian kedwatian. Welcome to One Lord James Onen.
Thank you.
Actually, as a matter of fact, welcome home.
Yeah, it feels like home.
Yeah.
I feel very comfortable here. Yeah, it's a very nice place. I'm glad I'm here.
Wow. So for the people who have been listening to you, we want to know who James Onen is. So tell me, who is James Onen? Where were you born? When were you born? Who are your parents? Where do you come from?
So, my name is James Otim Onen. I was born in Tokyo, Japan in 1975, so I'm 46 years old. And
you don't look 46 though.
Really?
Yeah, you get past for 30.
I'm almost 50, so please
Ooh.
show me respect. I'm an old man. My parents are the late Ambassador Julius Onen. He was formerly with the Ministry of Trade. And also my mother is Eunice Onen. At the time I was born, my father was working in the Uganda embassy in Tokyo as a diplomat there. And he served there for approximately 11 years. And during that time, myself and a number of my siblings, all of my siblings from my mother were born there. And so we came back to Uganda in 1986. And then I attended...
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, so what happened is after the takeover, the new government came into power, I think a number of former diplomats were called back and reassigned. So we came back in 1986, in March of 1986, shortly after the takeover, and I've been living here since. I went to Kampala Parent School to complete my primary education, and then I went to King's College, Budo.
Whoa.
Then I went to study in India to get my bachelor's in commerce.
Oh, wait, before you went to school, I want to know where you come from. Do you even know where you come from?
Yes, so my father's home is in Laibi.
In Gulu. Okay.
Yes, that is his origin.
Wow.
Although eventually he moved the family homestead to Kiriandongo district.
Oh, okay.
It's called Boyada.
Yes.
Is where now the family home is situated. Although the ancestral home is still there.
In Laibi Gulu. Great. So let's talk about your childhood in Japan. How was it? Do you feel like at some point you must have maybe missed growing up or being born in Uganda?
Well, obviously because I was born in Japan, I didn't know much about Uganda. My first time to visit Uganda was when I was 10 years old. And of course, I went to spend time with my grandparents in Gulu before the war broke out. And it was very nice, exciting, fun place. A lot of people were happy and productive. Those are good times. And of course, thereafter that region fell into a lot of turmoil. And there's a lot of suffering. The house that had been built there was destroyed and looted, and everything fell into disrepair. But since then, things have turned around now.
Yeah.
The region is now thriving and booming, and I'm very happy to see that.
Okay.
But yes, so I've always felt connected to my culture, the culture of my family, because it's different. I mean, I've lived in Kampala for a long time, but in Gulu the vibe is different. The people are different. There's the warmth, the friendliness, just the feeling of joy. I've always felt connected to that, and I think it's a part of me. I think I carry it.
Oh, yeah, but of course.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your childhood in Japan.
So I would have to say, and maybe I'm just biased, but Japan has to be the most fun place a kid could grow up. There's just so much to do, so much to see. so many things to entertain you.
We're better than Gulu, the mangoes. The place is so big you can run around. Can you run around in Japan?
Yeah, well, yes, you could. In certain places, of course, there would be parks to go to, but also, it's a very technologically advanced society. So there are a lot of electronic things to keep you occupied. I also enjoyed a lot of the media there, what was on television, the cartoons, which now internationally people are appreciating Japanese cartoons more, or it's known as anime. But that's the stuff I grew up watching. So to now see several decades later in Uganda, some people started.
Well, I have seen that before.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, welcome to the club. I've been on this for decades. But so I was sent to study in an international school where many children of diplomats and expatriates were being sent to study. And then, so I came back to Uganda in 1986, and I really struggled because the curriculum was so different and the style of teaching was
So it's safe to say you had a very privileged childhood.
I would say it was a childhood where really there was no lacking. Like, I had everything I wanted, or at least to the extent that my father was willing to offer. We got it.
Are you the eldest child?
Of my mother, yes. So it was very interesting, I would have to say. And at that time, and the schools I was going to were very expensive schools in Japan, me and my siblings. And at that time, the government was paying for all of it. And I hear now, diplomats, the children of diplomats, I don't know if there are limits to how many you can have over there or things like that. So I understand that things are a lot more difficult for diplomats now than they were then. So in the 70s and 80s, I think diplomats were really enjoying themselves in their deployments compared to the diplomats
now,
where things are a bit more strict and maybe there are a bit more limitations. So I happened to be out there at a good time.
Sure did. So let's talk about your return to Uganda. You enrolled to school. When did you return? How old were you, and which school did you join?
So I was 10 and a half years old when I returned to Uganda. I was about to turn 11. And so I first was enrolled in East Kololo Primary School, which was a primary school close to where we were staying at the time when we first returned to Kampala. I was there for about 2 months, and I really liked the school. I liked the kids there. But then they said, no, we want to send you to a different school. So they sent me to Kampala Parents. And so apparently that's the school where, all the important people's children were going to.
You were important as well at that time.
So that's where I got sent, and I hated it. I hated Kampala Parents. It was so strict. I thought the teachers were mean. But now, of course, looking back, I understand that it just had different standards. And it was a school that really prioritized academic performance and over other considerations. And at the time, and for many years afterwards, I think they were the school that was producing most of the top performing students. In fact, in the year I sat PLE, the top students in PLE in the country was actually a student of Kampala Parents, and sadly he's now deceased. He passed away. Henry Mchuere Kamuntu, he passed away some weeks ago from COVID. But he was the top kid in that year that we sat for PLE in the country.
Wow.
Anyway, so I managed to get an aggregate 4.
Oh, you did well.
So maybe that rigorous teaching system at that school.
So let me ask, as a kid, did you feel something like some sort of culture shock?
Oh yeah, for sure, I did. I mean, things were different for sure. A lot of the facilities that I used to enjoy in Japan were absent. when I first got back. And you have to understand, I mean, I'm coming from the most technologically advanced country in the world, and I'm coming to a country where really they're just picking up the pieces. We've just come out of war, barely anything is working. We didn't have reliable telephone lines. You know, people take mobile phones for granted. I mean, at that time, you know, to get a phone, just a fixed line phone, you'd have to like apply, and maybe you'd hear back from Uganda telecommunications at that time. Maybe 6 months later, they tell you, okay, we have approved you for. I mean, things were so slow back then. I remember there were no places where you could get ice cream. There was one shop in Uganda where you could get ice cream. It was called Bimbo Ice Cream.
And those are the things that you enjoyed.
Yes, every corner had an ice cream stall or a nice eatery where you could get all those fancy things. I mean, today you take for granted all these fancy restaurants, but in 1986 in Kampala, there were really no such places. But still, I felt very much connected to this place and to the people here, and of course to my family. And I did what I had to do. I tried to study hard, had very adventures and misadventures along the way. And, here I am.
Well, do you speak some Japanese?
A little, yeah.
Oh, it's been years, but
it's been years, so I still fully comprehend and understand the language. But of course, when in speaking, I'm a bit rusty because I've really never had a chance to practice it with another person that speaks it.
But you can at least say, "Oh, my name is James Onen," or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, can you sample?
Konnichiwa. Boku no namae wa James desu.
Wow. Okay, I'm lost. What about Luo? How good is your Luo on a scale of 1 to 10?
Negative something.
Oh my goodness, this is embarrassing.
I only know Kokongo, Kope.
Iri mabe?
Yeah.
you say Ari mabe. Ari.
Ari.
Yes.
Ari is, it's not Iriabe.
Iri is like you, then Ari is like me. Ari mabe.
And then the response is?
The response is Ari mabe.
Oh, so you say Iri mabe?
Yeah.
I say Ari mabe.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. You know,
so
my parents got a lot of criticism. By the way, it's been a big bone of contention in my family, and they were shamed all the time by relatives. But your children can't even speak the language. What's wrong with you? And you know, they'd be there. And to be honest, I don't know why. We were never taught the language.
Did both your parents speak the language?
Yes. Well, my mother is Langi, but literally the same language.
Literally the same. Yeah.
So at home, I would hear them speaking in the language, but you know, it was just sort of background noise as I was watching my Japanese cartoons and enjoying all the Japanese that I was soaking in. So I soaked in a lot of the Japanese culture, and so what happened is that, you know, when I first enrolled in the school that I went to for primary education, it was an American school. We could not speak English. At the time, I could only speak Japanese and broken English.
So your first language is actually Japanese.
You could
say that.
So I had to enroll in after-school classes to learn how to speak English.
Oh my goodness.
So it was fun. It was very, very funny. But anyway, I guess it worked out.
So we can say you speak Japanese and English only. How good is your Luganda?
Terrible. And I say this with great shame also. I just don't know what's wrong with me. Because, I mean, I've lived in Kampala, you know, the center of Uganda. I've lived here for over 30 years. Surely I ought to be able to speak Uganda, but really nothing. I mean, outside of the bare minimum. I speak the level of Luganda that a tourist who has lived here for 3 weeks would know.
Oh my goodness, James.
You know, Oriotia,
Jendi, Jevaleko,
Sentemeka. That's it.
Can you buy stuff at least? Can you find your way around if you're lost?
Well,
those things.
Now that's starting, to my ears, that's starting to sound complicated. But I mean, fortunately, I mean, I live in the city, so enough people can communicate in English.
Yeah.
And you know, to different degrees. But yeah, at least in Kampala, you can somehow manage without really understanding Uganda.
But you do understand, right? You just can't speak.
Even understanding it. it's like something in my brain, the area responsible for language is just switched off or something.
I think you can decide to switch it on.
How do you do it? Because I've tried. Believe me, it's not for lack of trying. I've even dated Baganda women hoping they would teach me.
They should have taught you, Uganda.
You know, that's what I do. Every time I date a woman from any region, I try to see if they can teach me a few words in their language. Because I've dated from almost every region. I try to pick something, but somehow they're not interested.
Speaking of dating, is there anyone you're dating now? At 46?
I know it's an embarrassing question. If someone is 46, you should be asking them about their wife.
Oh yeah. Okay. Correct. Let me correct myself.
but to answer that question, no, there is no wife. Yeah.
Okay.
But there is someone I'm seeing.
Good. All right. So let's move on. So you returned to Uganda. You finished your primary school. You said you went to Budo. Talk to me about your experience in Budo.
Well, in Budo, the good thing is I migrated there with a number of my friends from Kampala parents, because like I mentioned earlier, at the time we were like the top performing school. That is the old Kampala parents under Edward Kasole. I think the school transferred to new ownership and it's now a different kind of school. So I'll speak to the old school that I remember.
Yeah.
So we came, so a good dozen or so of us from my class came, and many of us were placed in the same dormitory. And so at least adapting to that new environment was not so difficult because my friends from primary were there. But being away from home was, it didn't feel so bad. It was a bit of an adventure, to be honest. And like I said, I'm with comrades, so it felt like a fun getaway. In terms of the education though, I feel like that school is, a tad overrated, because in terms of the teaching, I didn't really feel like I was receiving top tier education. I think that school benefited from just having, because it had a high barrier for entry, like to be enrolled in the school, you had to be a top performing student. So I think by virtue of the fact that the school mostly accepted top performing students, I think those students had the kind of academic discipline and maybe you could say even the intelligence to be able to teach themselves many of these subjects. Because, a lot of our teachers weren't the most engaging or,
If you look back, or you knew that even back then.
I would have to say looking back, they were really your run-of-the-mill government school teachers. They weren't exceptionally interesting or engaging or fascinating. They'd come teach the subjects, give the notes, but then what would happen is that we would have discussion groups. So we would get together after classes among friends and sort of go over the notes for the day and the things we were taught. And so we ended up sort of teaching ourselves. And I don't know if I should give the school credit for that, but I think that culture really helped to foster the kind of, how can I say? I think that helped to allow many students to excel later on in O levels and A levels, is that we were mostly teaching ourselves. I don't think this is something that's widely discussed among former Budonians. There's a lot of camaraderie among ex-Budonians, former Budonians. We feel proud of Budonians.
Yeah.
But you very rarely hear.
And you intimidate the other school.
Yes, but you never hear them talk about the actual teaching aspect of, at that school, and that's very interesting. So you're now in media, so maybe in the future if you ever engage a Budonian, you can quiz them on that. So tell us about how you were being told. Would you say that school had good teachers? Because honestly, I wouldn't say they were terrible, but by no means were they exceptional. And if you want to give credit for any of the performance that some of the students had, really I would say it came from the students more than the teachers.
I think it's the perception that was built around the whole school. I
think so. There's a bit of and obviously since then the myth has been demystified a little bit, because Budo is now no longer the top performing school. Now there are so many other schools that have far surpassed it in terms of how many first grades or top students they churn out.
But they still carry that facade. But Budo, King Budonian.
If I ever have a kid, I might even want the child to go there just for that.
Wow.
just have my child pass through, follow the steps that I walked.
My grandfather went to King's College, Budo, and my mom still says, my dad traveled all the way from Gulu to Budo for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And he spoke the accent like real,
Is there a Budo accent?
At that time, the British guys are the ones that taught them, so they spoke, yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yes. So you had Budo for 6 years?
Yes, I was there from senior 1 through to senior 6.
Wow. Then you joined the university?
Yeah. Now, what happened was that I didn't perform well enough to be accepted into the course I wanted at the university on a government scholarship. I wanted Bachelor of Commerce. But then I didn't perform so well, so I was sent to study in India.
Wow.
And the reason why I didn't perform well, I would have to tell you that at some point I lost interest in school. Started to be boring to me. I don't know if it was adolescence or any of those things.
So what was occupying your mind as a child?
I think just not knowing who I was or what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. There was also a few problems at home, which also distracted me a little bit. And so I entered, as I was winding up my A-levels, really my mind was just floating. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I just sort of sat the exam to just finish and be done with it. And even the BCom I ended up doing at university isn't really something I did because I was passionate about it. It's just the course you do if you want to get a good job. Or at least that was the conventional wisdom of the day. I don't know if people still feel that way, but at least with a BCom degree, it was thought at the time, you come out and you immediately land a job in the finance sector at URA or some bank or auditing firm. Those were the big sectors at that time that people were interested in, and maybe still are. So I did the BCom in India, and 3 years I was away, and I came back with my BCom degree and failed to find a job.
Before you come back to Uganda, how was it in India? What was the experience like? Was it so different from Uganda? Was it like Japan? How was it?
Well, culture shock. So
again,
my only understanding of India was what I knew from the movies I had seen. Right? And what do we all see from the movies? We see that the people are wonderful and beautiful, and especially the women are gorgeous.
Of course.
And so in my head, I was fantasizing, I'm going to get there and I'm going to get myself a nice, hot Indian girlfriend, and we're going to be, she's going to be dancing around me in the school hall or the corridors of the classroom or something, like in the movies. But we got there, at least I got to. So the area that I went to was a very conservative area and a bit not very developed, halfway developed, I would say. I went to a town called Bhopal, which is it's known as a student town. It has very many, it has big university community with very many colleges. So that is where I got sent, and there were many Ugandans who were there also. So you get there, first of all, I was astounded at how how do I put this politely? India is a very complicated country. I would have to say India is a country of extremes in every way. So you've got places that are extremely beautiful and then places that are just hideous. You've got places that are super clean and then you've got places that are filthy. You've got places that are just, you've got the very rich and you've got the very poor. And so they all coexist within the same vicinity. So depending on where your head is faced or the direction you're looking, one instant you're going to be gazing upon the most pristine, beautiful structure you've ever seen, and then you're going to turn the other way and you're going to see an awful slum with people just foraging for rubbish on the roadside, right there in the city, and that was quite difficult to take it. Those extremes are you're like, how does this place work? Like everything's just too mixed up. And so there was that initial culture shock. And then obviously language issues. They speak mostly Hindi there. English didn't have much penetration. Like outside of the college and the business environment, everywhere else really people are speaking their native language. And there was a bit of hostility towards African students in the town I was in, mostly because of a bad reputation that had been created by a number of characters. And you know how it is, people always stereotype. You know, if you're a community of people, all it takes is a handful of your members to misbehave.
Yes.
And then everyone else outside thinks, these people are not very good or stuff like that. So we had to deal with that sort of racism as well in some instances. But I would have to say, for the most part, people were very welcoming and very friendly. There would only be a few instances where you get into any serious problem. Now, as for class, it's funny, but the classes were quite interesting. We barely ever went to class because, again, the teachers spoke Hindi.
So they taught in Hindi?
Yeah. So what would happen is we would mostly teach ourselves, or we would hire private tutors to come and teach us in our homes. So we would register at the colleges so that we are affiliated with the college, and so we could sit the official exams. But then we would then go to our homes and
hire tutors
to teach us.
So you're paying twice. You're paying tuition and then you're paying the tutor.
Yes, and these tutors would be like students also. So it was very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you finished your university 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years, Bachelor of Commerce. I come back to Uganda, no jobs.
Wow, James. It's let's go for a short break and we come back and you take us through your experience of returning to Uganda and settling in and looking for a job and all of that. So upon return, you give us all that those details.
Lovely.
Yeah. So kira wali iwo tieni ati loki James Onen ma lem buda wachuli watien petie matekatwa so wati domo leb moro ma tamani utie ka winyine atien wa eni nye James Onen kira wali iwo ni eno be la tiji radio matekatwa moti radio pe mwaka piario amira kwa wachira yue manok kadok padukan.